Hey everybody, welcome back to the Modern Customer Podcast. I'm your host, Blake Morgan. Today my guest is Robert Glazer, entrepreneur, best-selling author, and keynote speaker. Robert is the author of 5 books: Elevate, Friday Forward, How to Thrive in the Virtual Workplace, Moving to Outcomes, and Performance Partnerships. He is the founder and chairman of the board of Acceleration Partners, a global partnership marketing agency. And today we're talking about how to be a customer-focused leader and how to get the highest performance from yourself and your teams. Please enjoy Robert Glazer. Robert, welcome to the Modern Customer Podcast. I think I read you're in Boston or that area. Is that where you are today?
Yeah, I'm right outside of Boston. It's feels like fall already. It's great. I love when the humidity dies down.
Oh, is it dying down? That's good. You can go for
Yeah,
walks.
it's got that fall morning and night feeling. It's gotten a little cooler.
Oh, good. All right. Great. Well, I'm so happy to meet you. I've been following you on LinkedIn for a long time now. For our audience that aren't as familiar with your work, let's just talk about the inspiration and why you decided to become a thought leader and author.
Yeah, I guess it sort of happened. I was building an agency called Acceleration Partners. I had not done it before. My nature is to kind of try to figure things out, and if they work, share them with other people. And so I started writing along the way, writing about our industry, writing about building a company, writing about sort of just kind of motivation and building capacity in people, and that sort of just took off and shared. And so as I continued to grow the company, I continued to write books about the industry and books about kind of leadership and management, and became kind of passionate about that. It was actually a little note that I sent to my team every Friday, is that people would share outside the organization, that eventually I let people sign up for it, and 100,000 people joined in over 100 countries. That sort of led to trying to turn that into a book.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. Clearly there's a performance aspect to all of your 5 books. What do you think right now? What are a few things that are required to operate at the highest level?
Yeah, look, some of it's on the leadership and some of it's on the employees. I think if I'm thinking about what have I constantly seen with organizations that are operating at a high level, well, there's clear kind of mission, vision, and values, right, that guide the organization. There's a clear plan and target. So at 2026, we want to be like this and look like this as a firm. And then there's a lot of accountability along the way, in terms of I think organizations that are, I think a lot of people tend to think it's an either or. We have a great culture and we're all best friends, or we're kind of highly accountable and we're all a-holes, to me, it's really that in between of being a great culture, investing in people, building them up. But like, if you don't have a dashboard that's got red, green, and yellow lights that holding people accountable, that what they said they're going to do, they do, you're missing a really important tool in your organization.
Yeah, I think that we're seeing so much volatility right now with businesses doing layoffs and
Yeah.
this type of thing. My audience, a lot of them run customer programs, customer loyalty, contact centers, customer service. Performance matters a lot, and one could say customer experience and service are not at the highest levels right now. Can you talk about any experience you have working from a customer perspective?
Well, I think, look, my experience is you need to understand what market you're in and you need to meet your market, right? So from an employee standpoint, 2021, like quite, great resignation. You could throw a dart and get a job that was better paying and switch tomorrow and switch again next week if you didn't like it, right? And that is not the case today. A lot of businesses, we've had 10 years of hyper growth, low rates, and the answer to every challenge was to add a new resource, to add a new department, to add a new product line. And now that business has slowed, I think it's very logical that everyone's looking around and saying, what is working and what can we stop doing and what can we pull away? So I think if you're operating in this mindset of a couple of years ago and not making sure, and you're sitting around and not sure whether what you do or your team does is adding value, and it's sort of not a full effort, that's not a position that you want to be in this market. My wish is that these pendulums wouldn't swing between sort of employee controlled and employer controlled kind of moments. Unfortunately, they do, and then there's a lot of payback. But I quiet quitting is not a great strategy for any team or otherwise. If your team or what you're doing costs more money right now than last year, and the results are the same or less, like you should be on red alert. And I've seen way too many people surprised, the surprise that's surprised when these conversations come to their table and they say, "Hey, Blake, like you run this team, you lobbied for all these raises last year. The costs are up 20%, the customer service team, and our satisfaction rate is down 10." That obviously can't last, right?
Yeah.
So you can pretend that it'll go away, but that's not a great solution in this market.
So what do you do, Robert, if you see that you've been giving raises or investing in employee experience and customer sat is still dragging? Like, is there a gap that's obvious to you?
I think first you have to acknowledge it. The way to buy yourself some time is like to acknowledge it. Hey, this isn't working. I want to dig in and figure out why. Like what's now, I want to talk to the customer. Like the first thing I think that a leader wants to see from someone on their team is that they're aware of a problem. When you have to bring the problem to someone that's part of their job, it doesn't start it off in a good way, right? So again, I would be very much looking at the metrics right now and figuring out, or have the data to say, look, actually from an industry, customers are extremely dissatisfied right now. Their turning is X, and our team's effort has actually reduced it in half. If we didn't do this, we'd be losing even more customers. But I always believe in being ahead of it. And what I'm seeing now, what I'm hearing in a lot of business groups and stuff that I'm talking about, people are going to people and having conversations that would have been initiating conversations. It should have been very obvious that these conversations needed to happen. And when you're not the one initiating it or showing that you're aware of it, it sort of starts you on the defensive.
Okay. And I mean, it makes sense what you're saying for customer service. I've heard that one of the big challenges is there's just too many B players, C players, D players. There's not enough A players at the middle management level. And you kind of have
Yeah.
to cut those people, which might hurt. I mean, are you seeing companies like lean out and try and figure out where the gaps are?
Yeah, and probably first it's the accountability. I just got off a discussion before this call around how do we make sure our best people are really well paid if they're getting the outcomes, and then how do we make sure that the people who are getting really poor outcomes aren't around or well paid enough to want to be around to keep delivering the poor outcomes. So I still most places still don't think have these dashboards or they come to the meeting saying this is what's red, this is what's yellow, and this is what's green, and no one should be surprised about those things. Like if you're in the red all year, you should know that, and you should be kind of taking things to mitigate. Look, customers are they're hard to please right now, but that doesn't mean that some people are clearly doing a better job than others. And to me, it's always better to be ahead of it than be chasing it once you know it's a problem.
Yeah, that's interesting that you say customers are hard to please. Do you think they're fickle and they're just holding on to their wallets right now?
I think there's a bunch of things. I think it does look at all the nurses quitting and teachers quitting and anyone who has to deal sort of frontline with people yelling at them all. I think customers have become very entitled. They've learned how to use the internet to kind of get what they want and be angry. And you hear much more of the bad stuff than the good stuff. So, but it's also, you've had a, a moving around economy and cyclical environment and things doing well or not well. So I think people are careful with their money, and they know their alternatives, and they know that they can kind of go make some noise if they have a problem, and they're more likely to do that when they feel like they're not heard or listened to. Look, the simplest and best thing that I've seen people do, and it's probably AI driven, but it's just when you complain about something, whatever, they just repeat it back to you, right? Like, I understand you're really frustrated that your flight arrived at midnight last night and there was no gate agent. Like, oh, they get me. But you realize it was just your own words, but it's just a really good tactic to make sure your people know that you're hearing them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep. Robert, a lot of what you cover is about performance, getting the most out of yourself and your people. What are some of the key principles of getting the most out of yourself? And then we'll talk more about being a great manager.
Yeah, I have the same framework that I talked about in two of my books, Elevate and Elevate Your Team. It's this concept of building capacity in people. So how do we make them better people overall, not just better employees or better at their job, but I think these things are holistic inside of work and outside of work. So there's four spectrums to that kind of spiritual capacity, which is like, what do you value and what do you really want? Intellectual capacity, and that can be true for an organization or an individual. Intellectual capacity, which is how do we learn, plan, and execute with discipline. Physical capacity, which is your mental and physical capacity. Emotional capacity, which is relationships and how do you relate to the things that you don't control and that are sort of outside of you directly. And I think that organizations that help their team really perform at a higher level, like I don't know anyone who walks at home is working out and super health oriented and on time and good at priority and good at budgeting, and then they walk into the workplace and they eat junk food and are bad at budgets, and we're the same person, and these are the same skills. And I think a lot of these things, as you learn how to improve them holistically, is you learn how to have a better schedule and what's the smartest way to work, and when should you do meetings, and when should you do good cognitive work. These are things that like help make your employees better holistically. And if they do that, they're better employees, but they're also better spouses and parents and otherwise. And they kind of associate that back to your workplace. I mean, you don't want a workplace that destroys people's physical capacity or their mental health, but you also can be a workplace that encourages behaviors that improve it. Like you have fitness contests, or you have when someone says, hey, I'm going to go for a run this afternoon, you say, awesome, that's great, I'm glad to see you doing that. Like, and I can tell you that if I've ever had employees training for a huge event like a marathon or a triathlon, they are always at tip top like mental and physical performance. Why do I want to discourage them from doing that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. Let's talk about something I saw you post on recently, which is ghosting, and that people are doing this more and more. It seems like this more passive. I mean, I can't even think of examples with people I talk to that inquire with me, and then they just don't respond. Or, I mean, it happens no matter what industry you're
Usually
in.
after you do a huge proposal, then they ghost you, right? It's like I need this tomorrow. Can you get me the huge proposal and do all this work? And then you send it to them and you never hear from them again.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's hard for me to understand because like I'm not passive aggressive. I wouldn't say I'm aggressive, but I am like confrontational. I kind of laugh with my friends sometimes. Like, I guess I'm not passive aggressive. I'm aggressive.
You're openly aggressive. Yeah, that's the
No,
best
but
kind, right?
I think it's rude. I think if you're going to reject someone or give them bad news, you should
It is
just do
rude.
it nicely
Yeah.
and quickly, rip the Band-Aid off. Why are people ghosting right now, and why should they not do this?
I think it's sadly just a sense of some of where we are in society and hiding behind, computers and texts and otherwise. But again, these things tend to go back and forth. Companies get all of this grief for ghosting employees in the job process, but the data actually shows that more employees ghost companies than companies ghost employees. They don't show up for interviews. In the Great Resignation, they took jobs. So again, a company is not a real thing. These are just individuals. They're the same people on both sides. It's sort of just bad societal behavior. And I just think it's bad juju. Like you never know when you're going to go to a company and you're going to be in the industry, or that person's going to be on the other side. And it just doesn't take that much time to close the loop. If someone came and interviewed with you twice, like you can write them a response and say, look, we're not moving forward. Similarly, you can tell someone you're not taking that job. I just don't think there's an excuse for this. And look, we all get unsolicited emails, but I just have a bunch of templates and I tend to reply to people and say, thanks so much, not interested, not a fit. Can you take me off your list? Not that I think I owe any like spammer, of course I'm not replying to Nigerian princes, but you know what happens when you don't reply to these people? They just follow up 6 times. Like I'm sure you've seen, they follow up with a follow-up email. So I would rather kind of end it on the first time. And so there's a whole bunch of keyboard tools and shortcuts and Superhuman, and I have OneNotes, and you can just have a bunch of templates to like, I basically have templates for like the top 10 things that I am requested the most of consistently, that just make it easy for me to say no and get back to the person rather than just not answering them.
Yeah, I think there's this heightened anxiety right now in society where people are almost just frozen. It's like they don't know what to do, so they just do nothing or don't show up. Which
Yeah.
I think we need to teach young people to like some of the principles of old school, like show up on time,
Yeah,
be
they're
direct.
conflict avoidant. They're used to,
Yeah.
again, a sort of Twitter world where it's asynchronous and you don't have to have these discussions. But yeah, I think basic respect is a good thing that we should try to bring back. And I just don't get ghosting. But again, and I don't like these narratives. It's the company or otherwise. That's BS. It's people. Like companies don't ghost people. People ghost people.
Mm-hmm.
And you as a candidate, who don't talk to someone who goes to company are probably the same person that you're hired at another company that's going to do that to someone else. So let's stop blaming the companies and let's start like talking about that these are humans making this decision. Me reading the email saying, Bob, can you please tell me, like, did I get the job? And me deciding I'm not going to reply at all. Like that's a personal decision.
And in customer service, this is good behavior too, because studies show that if you just tell the customer you're going to get back to them, even if it's in 2 days, if you don't give them a timeline, or you ignore them, the customer is just going to reach out on a million channels. So if you just
Yeah.
even just like tell them, sit tight,
And
we're
then they're going to
working
say,
on it.
Blake didn't respond to me and told me that you would, or
Right.
otherwise, or I mean, I can't tell you the number of companies where I've called in over the years. It makes me enter my account information. It gives me my phone number. I get on with the person. They're disconnected and they don't call me back. It's happened
Right?
and I'm like, I don't understand. You had all the info here to call me. I just verified it all. And
Yeah.
like, why aren't you calling me
It's
back? And this
shocking.
is, this is a big thing. I think that is just so people are desperate for improved customer service. Like, be the point of accountability for someone. Like, again, I got to look into this or whatever, but I'm going to put you on my thing. I'm going to call you back. I'm going to take care of it. That is just like so missing today. People feel just handed off and that no one is saying, look, I own this and I'm going to sort of, there's some great lost bag stories around people have like called the airlines and been like, my bag is like sitting here in the Chicago airport. Like I can see on my AirTag. And the
Yeah.
airlines are like, no, it's in Baltimore. Otherwise, they're like, can you just have, and they can't figure out a way to have someone go look. So they have to fly to the airport and go take their bag because the airline can't figure out a way to have someone own that and call
Hmm.
and say, can you do me a favor and see if that bag is sitting there? It's just kind of crazy when you think about it.
Yeah, and it seems to boil down to metrics, Robert. Like, why aren't these individuals incentivized to have extreme ownership and be accountable?
Right.
It has to do with
The
how they're
wrong metrics,
rewarded.
probably. Yeah, yeah. Behavior follows incentives, and you're probably incentivizing the wrong thing because I am sure that United Airlines is not super happy about the front page story about the person who had to go get her bag from Baltimore because after 11 calls to United, everyone told her that it wasn't where it actually was.
Is that a real story or is
Yeah,
it just
it's
an
a real
example?
story.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's a real story.
She
Okay.
she used her own money and flew and got her daughter's lacrosse equipment because they mistagged the bag and they kept telling her it was in one city and she's like, I can see it. Like I can see exactly where it is. Can you just get someone in the airport to go look for it?
It's shocking. Yeah, it's shocking. It's interesting how now customers are armed with so much technology. They're able to do a better and a quicker job than the company.
Yeah. And look, I think what she needed in that case was someone to just say like, I got this. Like I'm your person, right? I'm gonna follow through, and you don't have to call 6 times. And that's what frustrates people, and that's what sends them out into the world writing, terrible reviews about things.
So let's talk for a few minutes about customer focused leadership, about creating accountability in those employees that we're just talking about, like at the
Yeah.
airport. What are the ways to create accountability in your team?
Uh, I think this is a combination of you look at a place which I also just wrote about, like Backroads, which has a 9.8 average out of 10 kind of trip net promoter score. I think they focus on their hiring of the right people. Like, who are the type of people that want to be in this environment and be in customer service and like pleasing people,
Wait,
right?
what
That's
is
a
Backroads?
Backroads is a adventure bike and experience trip
Okay.
company, and there was a big article in the Wall Street Journal how they have this 2-week boot camp training where they take their employees out and they have every customer thing pretend to go wrong and teach them how to fix it kind of in the field. And so I think you need the right person, and then you need the right training and the right metrics. And it's very clear that like for the Backroads people, they know like their net promoter score is huge, and anything that they can do to improve the customer experience, they also have authority to do it. So as an example, there's a granola station every morning, and when you're going out for the hike for the day. And I was joking with the instructor, we were joking about the GORP, which is, the name for kind of granola, good old raisins and peanuts. And everyone's like, well, what's their favorite kind of trail mix? Sorry, trail mix. I was like, actually, like, I like that. But to me, the best trail mix has granola and chocolate chips, in it. Like, and we had a whole discussion. Someone else said, oh, it has this. We go out to go the next morning. What's on the table that wasn't there the day before? Like granola and chocolate chips.
Wow.
Like probably cost $5. I'm definitely going back with 4 couples on this trip again next year. We're recruiting 2 other couples. Like that's where they're not even trying to measure it. My guess is, and I don't know it, but knowing how well they train, they say to the people, look, if anyone asks for anything and you can just do it and it's less than $25, like just do it, right? Like I'm sure that is actually a policy in the organization.
Yeah, I mean that's what makes you that's what takes you from good to great is listening. Like 11 Madison Park Restaurant. I don't know if you've read Will Guidara's book, Unreasonable Hospitality, but it's that surprise and delight, the listening, the chocolate chips and the peanuts, which probably made your day and turned you from just a customer to a raving fan.
Yeah, absolutely. So, but I think it is these two things where you have to have it is 2-part. You have to have the right people. But you also you have to have the right training and the right accountability and systems to measure that. And if you have that combination, then that's sort of the winning combination.
Robert, so one of the things you talk about a lot is capacity. And I've been following Jerry Seinfeld for a long time. He does transcendental meditation. And because he says energy is one of the most important things, and it's really hard to create it for yourself. Is capacity energy? And if it is, how do you create more of that so you have more to give the people that need you?
I don't think it's energy, but I think it's related to energy. So capacity is sort of like, think of like a battery. Like it's what you have to give, right? And if the battery is 50 kilowatts, like you can fill it up to 50 kilowatts, but it can't give any more than that. And so capacity is how do you increase the borders of what you're able to do and accomplish? And interestingly though, it's not always more. You can build capacity and lower your energy. So an example I always give to this is like, if you have never had a really difficult conversation with an employee before or laid someone off, right? And you're young, like you probably lose 4 nights of sleep before this conversation. You think about it, all day. You don't know how to do it. You haven't done it before. And then afterward, like you probably it probably consumed like 30 hours of your time that week. Mm-hmm. If your intellectual capacity was improved, if someone had trained you how to do this, if your mentor had you sit in on a couple of these conversations, if they had you listen to a podcast and they said, look, here's how you do this well and not well, and you had some experience, you should be able to actually get a much better outcome from that conversation with a lot less energy expended. So capacity for me is more of a synonym for sort of ability that you're able to do. And in some ways, I actually think the goal is to use less energy or to have more sustained energy, right? You don't feel like you're getting tired because these are all like fun things that you want to be doing and you're learning and getting better. So it's actually not about doing more. When a lot of people build their capacity, they decide a lot of things they want to stop doing.
Mm-hmm. So smart. I love that. I think we all could constantly inventory what's on our plate, especially those of us that are working and have kids and have aging parents and dogs. And it's
Wait,
you can't do everything.
You just described my life.
I know, right?
You just forgot the aging dog because that's the only other caveat there.
Oh, are your dogs young or is your dog?
My dog's sick, so like he needs help too. So it's a sandwich generation.
Yeah, it's one of the blessings of getting older and having more responsibility, or for managers as you move up the ranks, like leaders, there is more that is required, but you just have to get smarter. And I actually interviewed the chief customer officer of United this week. Hopefully she won't hear how she failed.
No, that wasn't my bag. That was a CNN story on that. Yeah.
But she was saying like she's so vigilant about her calendar and has boundaries. And like these more senior people that are just so busy, like I keep hearing that. It's like they're very, very careful about what they commit to.
Yeah, and that's where that saying no and templates. Again, if I've had to explain it 3 times, it's better for me because a lot of times where we say yes or we're afraid to say no because we don't know how to do it well. I would rather stop for 30 minutes and write a really good template
Mm-hmm.
that now, like when someone asks me to speak for free, for example, for some really worthy cause, I have it really explained well why I don't do that, and I can kind of get that out quickly without expending a lot of energy.
Mm-hmm. Okay. That's so smart. I really like that. So being thoughtful and deliberate, taking your time, but respecting your own time and being willing to say no and have hard conversations is important. And it sounds like if you dive into them, they're going to be less painful than if you avoid them.
Yeah, I've never avoided a hard conversation, and people avoid it, by the way, because it's easier. And I've never had that create a better outcome, literally ever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
By putting it off, it's always gotten worse.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Got it. Love that. Well, let's get to know you a little bit better on a personal level. Are you ready for rapid fire?
I'm ready.
All right, Robert. What's the most important part of your morning routine?
Um, I have something called the Whole Life Dashboard that I built that's on my website, but it's kind of like a dashboard of my life and priorities and all this stuff. And I just scanning through that every morning and recalibrating what I need to do that day based on what's important is I just think it's an important exercise to constantly redirect the energy to what did I say I get done this quarter? And if I do everything I said I get done this quarter, then I'll get done what I said that I wanted to do this year, and I won't be surprised.
Mm-hmm. Okay. What show are you currently streaming?
You know, uh, we've had some bad runs here. I don't know what. I, I think I'm not in the middle of anything. We just finished some stuff. What I'm lamenting is what I really miss is the like half-hour sitcoms. I don't
Mm-hmm.
like to get deeply into a show at night when I get into bed because then I want to watch more. I used to love watching Friends or How I Met Your Mother or Modern Family or something that
Mm-hmm.
just kind of like takes your mind off it. And I've really been struggling. So if someone could respond to fine, it seems like sitcoms have sort of died off in the move to streaming.
Yeah.
And I could just use a good 25-minute like laugh.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. What's your idea of perfect happiness?
Um, Probably not thinking that you could achieve it like all the time. To me, it's like perfect day is just a good day.
Mm-hmm.
Like that was a good day. Like it was beautiful weather, a good walk, spent time with family. Didn't think and I think it's being really fully present, probably.
Yes. Not always easy to achieve. What is one mental health strategy for managing hard days?
I'm on the track these days that part of our problem with mental health is talking too much about mental health.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there are real issues out there and real problems we're dealing with. But I think if you want to break down, dissect, and question and talk about your feelings of everything you do, you won't make it through the day. So my strategy is like just pick your battle. Some things you just got to be disappointed and move on and
Mm-hmm.
not ask a lot of questions. So I actually I think we need to like tone down the everything is mental health. Something is just frustration, disappointment, sadness. These are all normal human emotions that all have value.
Got it. I really like that. I think that's smart. If you could have lunch with anyone dead or alive, who would it be?
I always said Herb Kelleher, who founded Southwest Airlines, because, well, I don't like, I'm actually flying Southwest this week. I don't love the Southwest value proposition as a frequent flyer. I so appreciated what he built and that he did the opposite of everyone else in the industry and built such an incredible culture and airline. And just, I read his biography and he sounds like a super interesting guy. And so I would have always loved to just sit down with him and chat.
Got it. All right. And lastly, if you had to describe your outlook in one quick motto, what would it be?
Cautiously optimistic.
Perfect. And if people want to learn more about you, Robert, where can they do that?
Yeah, if they're interested in that whole life dashboard, the Friday Forward newsletter, any of that stuff, my books, it's all at www.robertglazerglazercom.
All right. Well, this has been really interesting. I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much for coming. And for all of you, you have been tuning into the Modern Customer. Until next time. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel or follow me on social media, including Instagram, LinkedIn, X, and more.